So commander decks can now be 101 cards. But at what cost? Let's take a look at these cards and find out, shall we? What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Top Commander. I'm your host, Matt. So, with Ikoria Lara Behemoths just around the corner, we have two new mechanics being introduced into the game. One of which being the companions. Now, the way that these work is that each of them have certain restrictions to be able to build a deck around. And then you can use it as a companion, which starts outside of the game. So in Commander, you have your 100 card deck, and if you build it based on the restrictions, you have your companion starting outside. Now, the way that they work is you can cast them once from outside the game, effectively giving you 101 cards in your deck. Now, once they're cast from outside the game, they work just like a normal card in the game. It can be destroyed, tucked into your deck, sent back to your hand, and if it gets exiled, unless you have some way of getting it back, it's pretty much gone. So, some of these cards are... you gotta definitely look at it to see if it's worth building a deck around. I feel a lot of these are going to be more on the casual side, but some of these might, surprisingly enough, be worth using in a typical deck. Now, another thing to note about these companions is that they're all legendary creatures, which means that you can build a commander deck with them being the commander, because they are legendary, and they can still be used in the 99. So you don't have to use them as a companion. Now, if you build them as a commander or place them in the 99, you do not have to follow the deck restrictions. So that's another thing to note. Which means that they can still be used in Commander in general. But it's kind of a neat design, right? So the aspect of a legendary creature in Commander typically is, can I build a Commander deck around it? Or how good is this card in the 99 as a supporting card for an existing Commander deck? But now we have the companions, which have a third way of looking at it, which is it worth the deck restriction to be able to have a 101 card deck? So it's a neat mechanic, and I kind of like the way that they went with these on some of these. But it's definitely something that's going to be seen at a lot more casual tables. I feel like a lot of these are going to be fun decks if you build them as a companion. But also to note is that whatever the restriction is, the restriction also ties into your commander itself, which is very important for a couple of these when you go to look at them. Also, in the set, there were 10 of these companion cards made. One of which was Luris the Spell Chaser. He is on the ban list for Commander. So today I'm only going to be talking about the 9 that are available to use in the format, because there's no point really in talking too much about a card that we can't use in the format. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and start off with the first one, which is Urian Sky Nomad. 3 generic mana and 2 hybrid blue-white mana for a 4/5 legendary creature bird Serpent. His companion cost restriction is your starting deck contains at least 20 cards more than the minimum deck size. He has flying, and whenever he enters the battlefield, exile any number of other non-land permanents you own and control. Return those cards to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. Now, this one I wanted to start off with because his companion restriction is that you have to have 20 cards over the minimum deck size. In Commander, there's no such thing as a minimum deck size. Your deck is 100 cards, no more, no less. So Urian automatically cannot be used as a companion in our format. There's just no way the rules don't allow it. So he's not a companion. However, he's still a legendary creature. So as a commander, he's actually kind of neat. He's blue-white, which we have a blue-white flicker commander already, which is Brago King Eternal. So I feel like he would basically be a different version of a Brago deck. That it would be interesting to see how people go about building him. With that being said, though, his ETB trigger, it's something that sees play in a lot of flicker decks anyways. So I could definitely see this card being used as a utility creature in the 99 of Brago King Eternal, Aminatu the Fate Shifter, Ruin of the Hidden Realm. Even Chulane Teller of Tales would probably run him. I don't see a reason why not to, because Chulane is a cast trigger, yes, but she cares about bouncing your stuff so you can replay them. So I feel like you could still basically do a flicker deck with Chulane as well. With that being said, I feel like Urian's definitely going to see play in Commander. Unfortunately, it can't be used as a companion, but he was also one of the easier ones. There's a lot of people already talking about using him in different builds. I'm really interested to see what people come up with as a brew for Urian being the commander, though. So that one is kind of exciting to see how differently it's going to look between a Brago deck and a Urian deck. Because they're in the same colors, it's just, I feel like it's going to be built slightly different. So that's going to be interesting to see. But let's go on to the next one, which is Zirda the Dawnwaker. 1 generic and 2 hybrid red-white mana for a 3/3 legendary creature, Elemental Fox. His companion restriction is each permanent card in your starting deck has an activated ability. Abilities you activate that are not mana abilities cost 2 less to activate. This effect cannot reduce the mana in that cost to less than 1. And it also has 1 mana and tap it. Target creature cannot block this turn. Now, the companion effect on this one actually is not too far out. It's not too far gone from being a companion itself. You can easily do a red-white deck with a bunch of activated abilities. As a matter of fact, in the precons coming up, the Jeskai precon is a cycling deck. So, granted, you might have to swap out a couple of cards here and there within that deck to make sure that everything has an activated ability. But the commanders I was looking at from that deck in particular was actually Shabraz the Sky Shark partnered with Brawlin Sky Shark Rider. Because both of them, they are partner commanders, ends up being a red-white-blue deck. You can run a bunch of cycling cards, because cycling counts as an activated ability. And I feel like Zirda would definitely work as a companion. It might be a small build around, but again, it's only for the permanents as well, so you can still use your typical instants and sorceries for that deck. Artifacts, you're going to be safe with your mana rocks and things like that. So, yeah, I don't see Zirda being too far out of the ballpark to be able to use as a companion. As a commander, there's better Boros commanders out there. I'm not a huge fan of this. Within the 99, though, it's kind of interesting, right? Because his effect reduces the cost of activated abilities by 2. Typically, we only see those kinds of abilities on blue cards, blue-green, and I think only 1 artifact, which would be Training Grounds, Heartstone, and Biomancer's Familiar are the only ones that I can think of off the top of my head that reduce the cost of activated abilities. So having this effect in red and white is actually kind of cool to see it outside the color palette a little bit. But as a commander, I don't see it being too powerful. As a companion, I see it being possible. In the 99, it's definitely going to be a nice include, depending on the deck that you're playing, of course. But I can see it also being seen in play, especially in casual commander tables. So, with that being said, let's go on to the next one, which is Kahira, the Orphan Guard. 1 generic and 2 hybrid green-white mana for a 3/2 legendary creature cat beast. The companion restriction is each creature in your starting deck is a cat, elemental, nightmare, dinosaur, or beast card. It has vigilance, and it says each other creature you control that's a cat, elemental, nightmare, dinosaur, or beast gets +1/+1 and has vigilance. So it's an anthem effect. For specific tribes. Now, as a companion, the first deck that I automatically thought of was actually a Rabo Roar of the Wild. Because it's already a cat tribal deck. It's an existing cat tribal deck that plays relatively well, actually. So, if every creature in the deck would be a cat, you can definitely run this as a companion. I don't see a reason why not to, especially if it's just there for you. Another deck that I could possibly see this in is Gashoth Sun's Avatar. Granted, I feel like that one is a little bit more of a build around because I feel like every time I see a Gashoth deck, there's always a few creatures that are not dinosaurs. So, again, it's one of those things that, again, it's always going to be a build around, at least slightly, right? So, but as a commander, there's way better commanders than green white. In the 99, I can see it being used. But other than that, I don't have too much to say about Kahira. Kahira just, it's there. It's a great utility creature, especially in those tribes. +1/+1 vigilance is not... It's not the biggest thing, but it's not the worst at the same time. Let's move on to the next one, which is Jagantha the Wellspring. 4 generic and a hybrid green-red. For a 5/5 legendary creature, Elemental Elk. The companion restriction. No card in your starting deck has more than one of the same mana symbol in its mana cost. Tap and add Wooburg. This mana cannot be spent to pay generic mana costs. So that was a mouthful for the companion restriction. So let's just break it down very easily. Kaya's Wrath is a sorcery that costs black, black, white, white. If you use Jagantha as a companion, you can't use something like that. You can't use Wrath of God, which is 2 generic and 2 white. So, this one's definitely a build around. I feel like it's not the greatest card as a companion in the main deck, or even as your commander. It's a 5 mana dork that is on a creature that, I mean, it taps to produce Wooburg. So the first thing that kind of came to mind when I looked at this was actually Niv-Mizzet Reborn. Also, a Joda deck could potentially use this as a just one shot, here's something for 5 mana. Any of your 5-color decks that's going to run Joda, Fist of Suns, Niv-Mizzet Reborn would probably use it, but this one was more difficult for me to personally judge on whether or not it was going to see play or not. Now, I could be completely wrong. You can definitely let me know down in the comments below what you guys think on this one. I'm not 100% on board with this particular one, though. So, with that being said, let's go on to the next one, which is Luris of the Dream Den. It is 1 generic and 2 hybrid white-black mana for a 3/2 legendary creature cat nightmare. The companion's restriction is each permanent in your starting deck has converted mana cost 2 or less. It has lifelink. During each of your turns, you may cast 1 permanent spell with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard. Alright. This is one where it's important to remember that your commander also counts towards these restrictions. Which means that if you use Luris as a companion, there's only one commander that you can play it with, which is Ailey the Eternal Pilgrim. She's the only 2 mana Orzhov commander that we have. With that being said, I feel like the deck would still play if you try to build an Ailey deck with Luris as a companion. It wouldn't be as effective as it probably could be. This Luris as a commander. I think I've seen better Orzhov commanders. Kimball, Timna partnered with Ravos, Teysa Karlov. There's a number of Orzhov commanders that are just better. But with that being said, Luris within the main deck, 100% on board with this. It is a free cast something from your graveyard every turn. It's Muldrotha for 1 2-drop permanent every turn. That is actually huge when you think about it. It's just that little incremental value that you can get every single turn off of this one creature. So, is this card going to see play in Commander? 100% yes. It may not be as a companion, it may not be as a commander, but in the 99, definitely should be seeing play. Because it gives that extra added value. Which is what makes Luris such a great card in the set for commander in particular. I don't know of many decks that run black and white that wouldn't want to run Luris. Unless they're big mana decks. That's a different story though. But let's go on and check out the next one, which is Obosh the Prey Piercer. He is 3 generic and 2 hybrid red-black mana for a 3/5 legendary creature, Hellion Horror. His companion restriction is your starting deck contains only cards with odd converted mana costs and land cards. If a source you control with an odd converted mana cost would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. Alright. So, odd tribal, dealing double damage. The first thing that kind of came to mind for me was Vile Smasher the Fierce. Because he's 3 mana, he's in red-black, so if you partner him with any of the other odd converted mana cost partners, I could see this deck kind of being a thing, especially in casual tables, because you gotta remember, it's not going to be a competitive deck, really, because of the fact that, as a companion, you only get access to odd converted mana costs. So that means no Mana Crypts, no Lotus Petals, no Chrome Mox, no Mox Opal, no Mox Diamonds, none of the Talismans, none of the Signets, no Felwar Stone, no Thought Vessels. So, all of your fast mana ramp, even if you splash in green, you can't use Rampant Growth, no Farseek, no Nature's Lore. So, this one would definitely be a build around. But could I see it being a thing? Absolutely. As a commander, I feel like there's better commanders out there. In the 99, I could see it also being used in the 99, depending on what deck it is, as an extra damage doubler. But yeah, another commander that I was thinking about with this was actually Karavak the Merciless. He's 7 CMC. And whenever anybody casts a spell, you get to deal that much damage to any target equal to the CMC of that spell. So now you're dealing double damage if it's an odd converted mana cost. So that's just a little extra commander action that I was thinking about for that one. But with that being said, Obosh, he's there. I don't know if I'm going to see him too much, but will he see play? Sure, definitely, especially in a lot more casual tables. But let's go ahead and go to the next one, which is Umori the Collector. It is 2 generic and 2 hybrid green-black mana for a 4/5 legendary creature ooze. The companion restriction is each non-land card in your starting deck shares a card type. As Umori the Collector enters the battlefield, choose a card type. Spells you cast of the chosen type cost 1 generic less to cast. Alright, so there's only a couple of decks that I could see this being a thing for. The biggest one being Karador Ghost Chieftain. Because each card in your deck has to share a card type. Which means you have to go all creatures, all planeswalkers, all artifacts, all enchantments. Now, going the planeswalker route, the only one available in black and green is Lord Windgrace. I'm not sure if there's an enchantment creature that's legendary that you could use as your commander for black and green. But Karador, I could see a Karador deck being a thing. You're just restricted to having only creatures in your deck. So, that's not really great as a companion. For casual tables, of course, these are fun decks that you can build for casual tables. Absolutely. Now, as a commander, there's way better black and green commanders. So, I don't really like this card as a commander. In the 99, if I'm looking for a mana reduction, there's way better cards to do that. So this one I'm not too thrilled about in commander. Now, with that being said, this next one is completely different on that. Garuda, Doom of Depths. 4 generic and 2 hybrid blue-black mana for a 6/6 legendary creature demon Kraken. His companion restriction is your starting deck contains only cards with even converted mana cost. When Garuda enters the battlefield, each player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, put a creature card with an even converted mana cost from among those cards onto the battlefield under your control. So, as a companion, there's one really huge downside to this. Everything in your deck isn't even CMC. Again, for casual tables, absolutely. But, talk to your play group and make sure that nobody plays Void Winnower. If you build this deck as a companion, Void Winnower just shuts you down automatically because you can't cast anything with even CMC and you can't block with even CMC creatures. That's a problem. With that being said, as a commander, I'm not too thrilled about that. It'd be interesting to see what people build. But in the 99, I could definitely see that being used in quite a few decks. Muldrotha would probably use it. I could see it being used in a lot of different Sultai decks, probably. Especially if you're in a mill strategy, I could see that being a thing. And the fact that it gives you that added value is actually really cool. Even an Amanatu, the Fate Shifter deck, would probably want to blink this just to get some more creatures into play and try to get advantage that way. So I see it being used in Commander, but the companion effect is definitely something you have to be careful of. And as a Commander, I would have to see what people come up with. But, moving on to Karuga the Macro Sage. 3 generic and 2 hybrid green-blue mana for a 5/4 legendary creature dinosaur hippo. The companion restriction is your starting deck contains only cards with converted mana cost 3 or greater and land cards. When Karuga enters the battlefield, draw a card for each other permanent you control with converted mana cost 3 or greater. Now, Uh, as a companion, I was thinking of big mana decks that would run something like this, especially for casual tables. First thing that kind of popped into mind was the Maelstrom Wanderer, just because it's already looking for big mana stuff. And the fact that it can be a draw engine is kind of interesting. As a commander, there's better Simic commanders, so I'm not thrilled about that. In the 99, as a draw engine, potentially depending on the deck itself. But, with that being said, that is all 9 of the companions that we have available in Commander. So, let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. Is there anything that I missed? Did I judge these too harshly? Are some of these better than I'm thinking? Let me know what you guys think. But until then, if you like this video or any other videos I subscribe, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Hit the thumbs up button if you like the video. Share the video with anybody that you know would enjoy content like this. And if you wish to support this channel directly, be sure to visit patreon.com/topcommander. We'll have that link right here on the screen. Until next time, take it easy.